Welcome to the Stevia Show. It's the Stevia Show. Helping you expand on what you know. Throw in a meme of the week and a review of the screen. And to have a show that covers everything.
Hey, Team Stevia, and welcome to episode 81 of The Stevia Show.
A talk show podcast that covers pop culture, world news, local artistry, and everything in between.
As always, this is Steven.
And this is Lydia.
And we hope everybody is having a great day today. We're going to do things quite a bit differently today. We're talking about a very serious issue. So we're not going to be doing the usual meme of the week and the media review because it's kind of that's kind of too lighthearted for what's going on. So really quick, you'll notice if you're watching, but now if you're listening, you'll notice that we have 4 guests with us today, or 5 guests with us today.
5.
5, yeah.
1, 2, 3. No, 4.
4. Okay, yeah. This
numbers are hard for us today, I guess.
Well, my last name's literally English. That's the excuse I give everybody. So that's the one that I'll keep on giving. So with us today, we have Alexxus Browning, Jacob Camps, Gregory Hope, and Nash McQuarters, and they are going to introduce themselves more in depth here in a second. But Lydia, do you want to go ahead with our content warning really quick?
Sure. This is going to be a serious episode, as Steven said, on the topic of race in America. Issues that will be covered include racism, racial violence, police brutality, and more. If these events cause emotional distress, please proceed with caution.
Yes. So as you all probably know, the horrible incident that happened in Minneapolis, St. Paul last week, we're going to be talking about that as well as Black Lives Matter as a whole. But first, let's go ahead and meet our panel today. So Jacob, we can go ahead and start with you.
Yo, what's up? I'm Jacob. I'm from Baton Rouge, Louisiana originally, but I've lived here since I was like 5. But I was raised by a white woman and a white gay man.
Oh,
so cool.
Good
That's
to
awesome.
know.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Cool.
My name is Alexxus Browning. I was born in Texas, but I like to say I'm from Tulsa, Oklahoma, because this is my home.
Cool.
But I am half black, half white. My dad's black, my mom's white. Growing up, they've always kind of tried to do their best because it's like their first experience, or it's like a new experience raising a child for both of them that was half black. So I feel like growing up, they always kind of tried to, I don't want to say warn me, but kind of let me know, like, I don't know how to describe that. It's like
what it could be like,
what it
kind
could
of
be
thing.
like. Yeah,
You were
different.
You had both.
Yeah,
You kind of realized with both.
Yeah, and so yeah, I'll get more into that a little later, but
Cool.
That's a little bit about me.
Sounds great. Thank you, Alexxus. And then Nash.
Hi, my name is Nash McQuarters. I am born and raised in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I graduated from OSU with a degree in sociology, and then I now work at Tulsa Community College. And I, throughout my 8 years there, I've been trying to do a number of events for students of color, for Hispanic students, Black students, Native American students. And we started the first program out for TCC, which is a recruitment-based program for LGBT students.
Oh, wow. Awesome.
Cool.
That's great. And then for those of you who are watching, you won't be able to see him because he is getting brake repairs done, but thankfully he said they are minor. So Greg, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself, everybody, please.
What's up, Stevia? Thanks for inviting me. My name is Greg Hope, born and raised North Tulsa, Oklahoma. Also an alum of Oklahoma State University like Nash, an educator, lover of music, and definitely heartbroken in this time right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're going to get more into that. But before we start with the interview, Lydia and I would like to act as moderators during this to keep the conversation going, because it is important to us, first and foremost, that you all have the floor here, because you all obviously have a much better perspective on this. So we want to, of course, be respectful and encouraging of that. So Lydia, we can go ahead and get started if you'd like.
Sure, yeah. So George Floyd in Minneapolis, Travis Miller in Edmond, Ahmaud Arbery in Alabama, etc. all happened this year, 2020, and the year isn't even halfway over. How deeply rooted is racism in the United States?
Yeah, and just anybody who wants to just shout it out, you totally can. So
I will say it is deeply rooted all the way back to 1619 when we were brought over first as slaves. Last year, we marked 300 years since the arrival of the first slave ship. And since then, it has been a struggle. There has been some improvements along the way. It takes time, but there are still traits in learned behavior that some people have in learned hatred that gets passed down through the family, and the misuse of stereotypes and all of that stuff. So it is very hard for African American people to kind of catch up or be equal when we have been oppressed for so long and steadily trying to grow.
Cool. Thank you for sharing that. And does anybody else have any thoughts about how deep it is here in the United States?
I'll jump in there on everything Nash said. It's definitely in America's DNA, and definitely the most heinous and original sin of America. I think it's manifested. It's not physical change anymore, but there's chains of mental oppression. We can look at our economic disparities amongst African Americans in this country, some of our health disparities, and even some of our treatment from the highest level of government when we talk about some of our people of color in general. What our Asian brothers and sisters are facing today with being stereotyped because of COVID and some of the things that are happening in our society. So it is as American pie. And not to throw something corny in there, but it's true.
Yeah, and I mean, unfortunately, it definitely seems to be the case. I mean, like Lydia and I, we were talking about this on Friday, and how to us it's just mind blowing. But then you're absolutely right. The fact that Nash said like since 1619, like this has been hit like history for a long time, and this is definitely a dark side of it. And before we move on, does anybody have anything else they'd like to say about racism being kind of like what Greg said in our DNA, or are y'all ready to move on?
I think just one more thing to point out.
Yeah.
A lot of people think that maybe racism has resurfaced now that Donald Trump is in office, but it never went away.
Yeah.
The invention of cell phones and being able to capture that in the moment is something that is not is pretty new, right?
Right.
And so we're able to start recording all of these instances that have been happening forever, whether it be with the police or the KKK or slaveholders, all of that.
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes sense. Really quick, Lydia did share with me a quote that Will Smith said that he said basically saying something along the lines of racism hasn't been stopped. It's just now getting filmed because, of course, like in the 1990s and 1980s, like we couldn't just pull out our cell phones and film that. So that's a really good point. Right. Yeah, absolutely. So moving on, why is the topic of race? Why is that still a controversial issue to be talking about in today's day and age?
Because it's always been a thing.
Gotcha.
Yeah, like 300 years in, and we're still not treated equally.
Right.
I think that's like, I don't know. It's something that I personally can't fathom. Like I don't have that in me. You know what I mean? Like racism towards anybody else. And it's like I can't wrap my mind around that. Like we're still here. Like we've made a slow progression, but as a whole, like the base of it is still there. The root of it is still there. And it's just like, I just can't understand that. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, the way Steven and I were talking too on that is like, obviously I don't know that, but my thing is like, why? I mean, I don't have that in me, so it's like, why do people have that in them? Why is it something for them to even why?
Yeah, and I think not. I mean, I of course can't speak definitively, but Nash mentioned earlier how a lot of it's passed down. It seems like it's something that's taught. So like, what are kind of like what are ways to stop those stereotypes and to stop passing along those whether those biases are subconscious or not? Like how do we as a society phase those out?
Everyone needs to speak up. If you witness it, if you overhear it, doesn't matter if you know them, you're just passing by somebody, speak up. That is like the worst problem with racism or prejudice is people just being silent or being content or staying like, oh, I don't want to get involved. I don't want any drama. I don't want to cause any riffraff. Just speak up. If someone's not around to stick up for themselves, you have to do it. You can't just sit back and watch that happen.
Because not saying anything is you're just enabling it. It's like all the cops that are around, with the last one, with George Floyd, it's like they just watched it happen. They at any point in time they could have stopped that, but because they chose not to, look what happened.
Yeah.
Somebody's been murdered. Yeah, absolutely. That's a very good point. And I mean, I definitely feel like we're finally getting there. I mean, I know, of course, Black Lives Matter. This is not a new thing. This has been going on since way before Trayvon Martin even. But I feel like with seeing just how bad it is, like I feel like a lot of people, especially people with social privilege, are finally realizing that silence is basically it's compliance. Like it's like you either A, straight up do not care about your neighbors and friends, or B, you're okay with it. And either option is not good, obviously, because we can't progress as a society there. So we appreciate that. Greg, do you have anything you want to add on that, or Nash?
I think it's very admirable, and I appreciate for you two to, with your platform, use this as a way to speak up. A coworker and I were talking about it, how, and I've also seen it on Facebook, how we're mentally taking notes of which people are not saying anything or trying to avoid it. But we have you two here who are actively trying to make a change in the best way that you can right now, and by getting this out to all of your listeners. And listeners who are out there, you are making a change as well by learning from us. I think not just because I work in education, but I think education is another big thing that can help answer the why that you may have had. So when people learn from other people and they get to know someone beside and more deeper than their skin. They get to learn about their traditions, their history, their culture. That brings that relationship, and that is what is going to help end racism.
Gotcha. Very well said, Nash.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah. And I'll jump in there with what Nash has said. I mean, I appreciate your courage in addressing this head on. And I think what minority populations need in America is allies and strong allyship. People of majority groups to speak out against these atrocities and speak out with a level of compassion, a level of conviction, and a level of courage, and stand up when we see institutional racism, when we see the racism that is subtle but yet there, to step out and to be a partner with those disadvantaged groups. Very important, and I appreciate you guys doing that with your show tonight.
Yeah, for real.
Yeah, anytime. And this is kind of like how we prefaced it in the beginning. Like, this is not about Lydia and I. This is about, it goes beyond the people in this room. It goes to the whole entire United States. Like, this is something that the two of us are passionate about, but not only because it's the right thing to do, but because like literally like you all, like you're our friends. Like we've had Jacob on the show before.
Yeah,
like,
we would never want anything like this to happen to not only you guys but anyone.
Right, exactly. And it's like I just can't imagine that happening to any one of my friends, because I would hope, because of course the same thing would not have happened to Lydia or I, but if it would have, like I would want somebody standing up.
Yeah, I would want somebody to say stop, please.
Right. And the fact that people aren't, that's just, it's like what you all were saying. It's an absolutely heinous atrocity, and we want to do our part to, like what Nash said, just to kind of spread the message and educate people and like get those perspectives and voices on there. So again, we appreciate that.
So next year will mark the 100th anniversary of the Tulsa Race Massacre. How impactful was this event not only to Tulsa but to the United States?
I'll like to start off with that one if I can.
Yeah,
go ahead.
For those of you that are watching, you'll see that I'm wearing a Black Wall Street shirt. I am the grandson of a survivor of the Tulsa Race Massacre.
Wow, that's awesome.
She was 5 when it occurred. Her and her family tried to escape. My grandmother got scared when she saw a man with a gun, jumped off of the truck, and her mother had to run after her. They then hid for the rest of the night. So when I was growing up, I was blessed enough to learn about the Tulsa Race Massacre early on. I went to survivor events and banquets. I heard personal stories. And it was such a blessing to hear her story from her. And now that all these survivors are gone, we are marking the 100 years since that event happened. But it was a huge turning point. For those who may not know, the Greenwood District, which was kind of dubbed as the Black Wall Street of America by Booker T. Washington when he came to Tulsa. It was very influential. It had movie theaters, grocery stores. It's on bus routes. It's on hospital. It was a really prominent district, and based off a allegation that wasn't true, the city of Tulsa kind of used that as a time to destroy Black Wall Street, burning 35 blocks and killing over 300 people. And for the most part, this history was kept silent in Oklahoma. And if you tell it to people, most of the time they do not even know, and they may have been born and raised in Oklahoma. Or a lot of them maybe just found out recently within the past 10 to 15 years.
Because of the mass grave, the mass grave search on top of that. And a lot of people were upset about that. I'm like, how the hell could you be upset about it? Because like what you said, Nash, the original numbers were suppressed because like growing up, you always thought it was like, I think it was like 30 to 50 or whatever, but turns out it's well over 100. And then Mayor Bynum had the courage to say, you know, hey, like even though this was like 99 years ago, the facts aren't straight, and like standing up for to get the truth out because of course white supremacy was even worse back then, and they were suppressing those lives and stuff like that. And that's a really good point.
And that was also the first time that America's soil was bombed.
Really?
In 1921. There were planes that flew over. I can't remember what military section it was, but it was planes that flew over and dropped bombs in the area.
Wow.
And so it was very impactful. And if you live in Tulsa, you'll know that the Greenwood District is nowhere near where it used to be. There's a little strip and there's a cultural center. And there are people who are out there and striving to bring it back and make it thrive. And I really appreciate those people trying to bring it back. But it's been 100 years and we're still oppressed. And a lot of it, and right now, which I find very funny, is that some of the land where the Greenwood businesses were that were destroyed, right now they're doing all of this major downtown development, and they're all companies owned by white Tulsans, and it's kind of just creeping over. And not to say that white Tulsans can't have the land or own their businesses, but it's just really ironic to see that exactly 100 years after the massacre is thriving again, but in different hands.
Yeah, and then for listeners and viewers who might not be familiar with that term, that is called gentrification, correct? Okay, just wanted to clarify that. So that's a really really interesting connection that you have there, and I am of course thankful that your grandmother survived. But for the hundreds that didn't, it's important to have those stories perpetuated. And I do know a lot of fellow Oklahomans who went to more rural schools. And of course, this isn't like, I'm not trying to dig at them, but like whenever they've told me they didn't learn about the Tulsa Race Massacre, I was like, how? But then I realized, like, going to high school here in Broken Arrow, like Black Wall Street's literally 30 minutes away from my house. So like, of course we learned about it and we spent a long time about it. But for those people who might be out further away, like it might not be relevant to them whenever it absolutely is. Lydia, did you learn that in school in Iowa?
No.
Yeah.
No. So I went to high school in Iowa, and that was never in our history books. I actually didn't learn about it until I was in college. When I went to college at NSU is when I learned about it for the first time. So I was like 20.
Yeah, and that's obviously no fault of your own, but that just shows like what Nash is saying.
100%.
Yeah.
If it's not relevant to the people in Iowa, I guess you don't learn about it, and that's sad.
There are also many people who grew up in Tulsa and didn't learn it.
About it.
Yeah.
Holy cow.
Yeah, which is absolutely sad. Yeah, because I mean, I definitely remember spending a while about it, but I mean, I definitely also know the vast majority of people that I know from not this area haven't ever heard of it, which is insane to me.
And when you talk about institutional racism in education, it's been, and Nash, you can correct me if I'm wrong, it's been only a year since it's been added to the textbooks and as a part of the curriculum in school for, the education system, secondary and elementary ed. So even with the knowledge, there's still no knowledge.
Right?
Correct.
Gotcha. Thank you. Does anybody else have anything they want to share about the Tulsa Race Massacre before we move on?
I also didn't learn about it until I was like almost out of high school.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah.
Wow.
And it was obviously not from school. It was from family members or other Tulsans that told me about it. And it was very upsetting that I didn't learn about it in school, because why isn't that something that you talk about?
Right.
Yeah.
Especially here.
Yeah.
You know?
Especially here.
Especially
Yeah,
here.
especially
Makes
here.
no sense. I didn't learn about it in high school either. I went to Edison, but like I said, it's important. I bring up that like I was raised by white people because they were allies. It's like, and when I was younger, my mom had a friend who had a book. He had written a book or something about the massacre, and she showed me. You know what I mean? And she made sure I was like real in tune with that side, because like although my biological father I don't know, so I didn't get to experience that side. You know what I mean? Or for them to tell me, we're not even from here, so you know I probably wouldn't have known either. You know, either
Right.
way. But it's like, you know, it's important to know that in a crazy time that we do have allies, you know, and they're all around us, just like you guys, giving us a platform to do that.
Gotcha.
So,
Yeah, we appreciate that. Greg, did you have anything you wanted to add, or? Oh, no.
And I think we hit on that topic really well.
Cool. Okay, sounds good. So moving on to the kind of national arena. So President Lyndon Johnson signed the 1964 Civil Rights Act, which will be turning 56 this July. So while this was, of course, a remarkable and necessary achievement, are we still seeing impacts of Jim Crow segregation? And also, do you think it's important that the law is only 56 years old? This whoever wants to go first. Yeah, no worries.
I'll go for it.
Okay, cool.
I think it's like, I'm trying to think. It's kind of hard to describe, but like to me, I feel like you still notice it because a lot of black people are still out north. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I think it's a lot of places are still segregated because they didn't have that. They didn't have that chance. You know what I mean? Like people would come back from war. The white people would get the money to start up life, to start creating wealth, to start getting property, but the black people did not. So they were already shorthanded, and then it's like, so then they're just gonna give us these places, and it's hard to come out of that. I mean, I don't know if you've been out north, but like, there's not a grocery store.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, and they don't want to put things out there, which are jobs. You know, places for like opportunity for the people around that area that may not have a car to go drive,
Right.
to go work. You know, even just downtown. You know, I mean, they're hustling on the bus, they're walking, they're riding bikes. It's like they act like they're not trying to make it better for themselves. You know, but it's like they already started out shorthanded,
Right.
And we're not asking for a handout, but we're asking for a chance.
Just like everybody else got. That's just
Everybody else.
just like a slice of the pie. Like everybody deserves it, you know?
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's institutionalized. As Greg mentioned earlier, especially with education, because that's what I work with a lot, is the differences in the high schools on one side of our town to the other. There were times when I would go to a high school in North Tulsa, and there would be a computer lab, but half of the computers wouldn't work. But while I go to a high school in South Tulsa, each student has their own Chromebook that they get to take
Right.
home, and that that is all a system to that's going to keep some people down and give some people an advantage. And some people may say it's not a race issue; it's an issue with funding, but that all comes into play, and it was based on all the dividing lines were all based off of race, just to put it simply.
Yeah, and to me, like that's an excellent point with school districts. So for listeners outside of Tulsa, Tulsa Public Schools does have, of course, you have the regular schools, but then you went to Booker T. Washington, correct? Which is a magnet school, fantastic high school. But for a lot of people, it's your zip code that basically determines, like you said, like if you're going to have the same educational opportunities, and that's in the same school district. So to me, that just absolutely blows my mind, and that's a really interesting point.
And what Jacob mentioned earlier, which was nice, to give the listeners an example, I have in my neighborhood, there are 4 grocery stores within less than a mile. But in North Tulsa, you have to go to Sand Springs or go to a whole different area of Tulsa. So,
Which is not easy to get to either.
Right.
Like, especially like Jacob said, if they don't have a car, they don't have, transportation, then how are they supposed to, feed their families and then also go to work and do all these things? It's definitely, you can see what you said, Jacob. You can see that people not getting a chance, and it's very unfortunate.
And something that may
And it's just right here in our backyard, which is crazy. Sorry, continue.
No, sorry. It's something that maybe something your listeners can do is take a look, take a day and just look at the differences in the predominantly North neighborhoods of your town and the predominantly white neighborhoods of your town, which every town has them, or little pockets. And look at the differences in the businesses that are there, the opportunities that the people have. And you'll kind of notice that if you haven't yet.
Yeah, and the differences are very stark. I mean, from because every time that I'm in downtown, like I try to go to Greenwood and at least support one minority-owned business, but they're so spread out because, like you said, like there's no opportunity because people, and then the richer white people are the ones who are buying the land and building the stores,
building stuff.
So it's hard to support. There was actually a Netflix series. There was a Netflix series featuring Killer Mike from Run the Jewels, and he tried to go a whole day supporting only black-owned businesses. And at the end of the night, there wasn't a black-owned hotel, so he had to sleep outside because he wasn't able to support black businesses. And that's in his home state of it was out of Georgia or Alabama, but here in Tulsa, Oklahoma, it's the exact same way. It's just like what Lydia said. It's in our backyard. So yeah.
Does Greg have anything to say before we move on?
Yeah, it's kind of sad when you think about 1964 and the Civil Rights Act, and it was monumental. I mean, I think it was important for that time because it ended segregation in public places specifically. But what I would like to see is us to reenact that as legislation or new legislation that went after the civil rights. Yeah, we have access. We're not discriminated against, but the subtle impulses of racism in criminal justice reform and the conviction rates of blacks to whites and also Hispanic male for the same crimes, the sentences are often so different. So I think we're in a day and age where we see the protests happening again, and we hear the call that we need an extension of this in our society today.
That's a very good point.
Yeah. Thank you, Greg.
So people in past generations were taught to not see color, and I put that in quotes there. While you would think this would be a seemingly admirable thought, how does it really impact racial justice?
It's ignorance.
Ignorance?
Yeah,
I'm going to get a little closer, Alexxus. I'm
Sorry.
sorry. No worries. Just wanted to make sure you were heard.
I took a sociology class at TCC, and it was like I didn't really know anything about it before the class, but it helped open my eyes a lot, and it actually helped me to like formulate thoughts I already had, but like they made more sense because I'm learning about it in a college course. So like growing up, personally, I've had a hard time like identifying with myself because I am half black and I have very light skin. So growing up, I've always struggled with like where I fit in on each side or in the middle. Like I just never knew. And so when topics like that would be brought up, particularly with my church, because I went to an all-white church.
Sure.
I found myself hearing things or trying to explain things from my perspective because it wasn't as open as you would think. So when people would say they don't see color, I'd say, well, wouldn't you like... I feel like that doesn't help. I feel like that doesn't get the point across that you're trying to get to me. Because to me, that's like turning a blind eye, like saying you don't see color. How about you just, yes, I acknowledge everyone's different. We all come from different backgrounds, and that is beautiful. Not pointing out that. I don't know. I'm trying to put that into words.
No, it almost like it doesn't exist. It's almost it's almost like that sentence. I mean, and again, like I feel like that's kind of like what our parents were taught. And like back then, it seemed like, oh, like, you know, not seeing color, like that's a beautiful thing. But you're inadvertently like washing out people by not seeing that. So that's a really good point, Alexxus. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, like everybody should celebrate where they're from, but it's like in the same time, I want you to see, you know, who I am, but I don't want you to judge me off of it.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like we're all humans. We're all basically doing the same thing anyway. Like we have the same goals. We want to, you know, feed our families. We want to, you know, do all these things. It's like I don't, why would you just hate another person just based off of
Right.
the way they look or where they're from?
Yeah.
And being black is not just your skin color. It is a culture.
Right.
We have traditions like Juneteenth. We have foods, which I don't eat chitlins. But we have music and dance. And it just to say, I don't see color as saying you are ignoring my culture.
Yes.
But we need to live in a world where everyone can see everyone's cultures and appreciate them and learn from them and take part and get involved in them.
Especially whenever America, like our idea is to be a melting pot, like to me,
That's what we were founded on.
right? Because to me that sounds like it should be all of our different cultures and diversity. Like that should be America's greatest strength because you have in a lot of like European countries and things like that, just the way they like that history has set them up. It's all homogenized, or however you say that, because that's culturally everybody's the same. But then America was supposed to be perceived as this land of opportunity where, like, exactly, no matter where you're from, you can make it here. But somewhere, obviously, along the way, that is not the case because it's a lot easier for some than others. So, yeah. Greg, do you have anything you'd like to add?
No, I think everyone hit on that beautifully. If we don't see people who they are, if we don't see if we don't see the uniqueness and the value that people offer, that's the thing that's most impactful.
Gotcha. Well, thank you very much for that. And then this question, Lydia actually wrote this one. So kind of weird that I'm going to be the one asking it, unless you want to ask it.
I can ask it.
I love it. It's a really good question.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So, do you all think racism is more prevalent in the United States than other countries? And why do you think yes or no?
I think
hard
it's.
to-
Go ahead. You're good.
I would say personally for me, it's hard to say because I haven't been other places. But with that being said, I would say it's probably strongest in America, just based off of like what I see in the media. But like I said, there's a lot of things that we don't see, so
Right.
you really don't know.
Yeah.
Well, and like I was gonna say, like the recent example would be ASAP Rocky when he got arrested in Sweden. And they held him. They didn't give him no kind of trial. Like it actually took Trump and them stepping in
I
to
forgot
him
about
to
that.
get
I totally
it.
forgot Trump
I
played
forgot
A$AP
about
Rocky. I was
that.
like, wait, what?
I forgot.
Wait, Donald Trump did something? Yeah.
The one thing.
Yeah, the one.
To help out the black people.
Yeah.
But it's like, they had it on film, the whole situation. And, the other people did not get in any type of trouble. He was held. And then, what did he do afterwards? He went back and he did a lot of things for the inmates. Like, he designed like new jumpsuits and stuff, but did a lot more than that, for the people, instead of showing hate to a country that had showed him hate. You know what I mean? Because it's like not really the country, but the government.
Right.
You know what I
Right.
mean? They showed him no compassion or anything. So it's like, and for him to go back, shows real growth and strength in a human in himself, because it's like, he's like, I'm not going to trade hate with hate. you
Gotcha.
know?
Gotcha.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I'm not as quite as educated to speak on that as much, but I will say definitely I agree that the media portrayal of racism in America, it's probably more than what you see now. You'll see more ethnic issues in other countries. If you go back to even Croatia and some of the issues they had with that state splitting into 3-4 different states and the wars and things that happened. So I think it happens in other places, but the media perpetuates it here. And I think it's more visible.
Good
Gotcha.
point. Good point.
And also with media in other countries, a lot of other countries watch American media.
Yes, they do.
And
Yeah.
how are black people portrayed in American media? Not well.
Right.
And so when black people visit those other countries, those people have these, the people there may have preconceived notions of a black person, and now they're automatically scared of you because of what they saw in some movie or something.
Right.
And it's sad that our American hatred and prejudice is leaking to other countries in that way.
Right.
Because it's sensationalism, it's like would you rather, like, what gets more views, like somebody like like committing a violent act, even though like that's obviously not in everybody's nature, but that's just what people want to see because it's like, oh, hey, look at this, you know, and which is sad. And yeah, so we appreciate that.
Yeah. And I didn't think about that. Writing the question, I didn't think about how people around the world are always watching America, but we never really see the news from other countries unless it's like catastrophic, you know, crazy things. This morning, actually, before we came here, I did see that a train in Belgium had been graffitied for George Floyd. So people are watching about all of the things that are going on right now. So I thought that was very interesting to bring up too. But that's a very good point. It's, you know, people from everywhere look at America, but we don't really look out, I guess.
Yeah, and it's kind of it's kind of hard to like point the mirror at ourselves because I mean, like I'm not going to Europe every week, you know, to say you know
exactly
like, hey, like, what do you think America's doing right now? You know, because I mean, obviously the answer wouldn't be very good.
Nope. Sure wouldn't.
So maybe I don't want to hear it, even though I should. But yeah, not well.
And colorism is also something that's popular in some.
What'd you say? I'm sorry.
Colorism.
Colorism. Sorry.
In some countries as well, they may be in the same culture, same identity, but because your skin is lighter, you're viewed as more visible. More beautiful. You're viewed, you're able to get jobs easier. And then some countries, they offer whitening cream to make people less dark. And it's that idea that dark is ugly and light is beautiful.
Yeah.
Really?
There's beautifulness in every shade of
Well,
it.
yeah.
That happens in the cosmetic industry quite a
Same
bit.
with
doesn't it?
hair, yeah.
Gotcha. Well, thank you all very much. So Lydia kind of mentioned George Floyd. So following the murder of George Floyd, there was a target in other places that were, of course, looted. But Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. stated that riot is the language of the unheard. So we, of course, saw similar events that happened in 1991 after Rodney King was assaulted by a police officer. So why do people seem to care more about the method than the message? So kind of an example of this is people were literally so upset that Colin Kaepernick kneeled during the national anthem, which of course he has a right to do so. But why are people more upset about the way persons of color protest than the actual message? Is kind of what it seems like.
So like Martin Luther King said, feel unheard.
Sorry, get closer again. I'm sorry,
Feel unheard.
Alexxus.
It's okay.
Yeah.
My first podcast. I'm heard.
It's okay, no worries.
Yeah. No, you're
But
good.
like Martin Luther King said, we just feel unheard. So, of course, violence isn't always the answer. But it's like, what else can we do if we've tried everything else?
And I think that that's what's happening right now is everybody feels heard. So that's why there's protests happening and riots and things like that, is because they're like, well, now's my chance. You don't often get chances. And so I think that's why this is all really kicked off like it has.
Yeah, and see, it's like, to me, it makes total sense, like, why the rioting and stuff happens, because imagine getting told, oh, you can protest, but don't raise your fist during the national anthem, like what happened in the Olympics back in the 1960s, or, oh, hey, Kaepernick, like, you know, you might have a point, but
you can't do that.
But you can't kneel. That's not okay.
And we're going to fire you over it.
So, right. So, like, what else is there to do? Kind of like what Alexxus and Dr. King said. So, yeah, very
We
good point.
can't protest.
Right.
Basically, the idea is that black people just deal with it. We don't want you to do peaceful marches. We don't want you to kneel. We don't want you to riot. Everything we do, there's going to be a backlash.
Right. Yeah. Which is sad. It's totally sad. It's like, it's either, okay, protest, or if everybody has a problem with it, just, I guess, write the rules or something like that. So everybody has the same rules to follow, which of course that's stupid, but it's just ridiculous to me that people, one, don't want voices of color to be heard, but then whenever they are heard, they want to change the way it's done. And to me, that blows my mind in like the worst way possible. But that's me. Greg, do you have anything you'd like to add?
It is just so sad and disappointing that, and although I don't condone the violence, I don't condone the property damage, because the only way to address hate truly is with love. But we talk about Ahmaud Arbery. We are just now hearing about this. I don't know if it's just me, but that happened back in February.
Yeah.
And I think the media just now gave it the coverage it deserved. The same with the young lady in, Louisville, Kentucky.
Yeah.
Whose house was raided and she was shot. So we have to go through these extreme methods of social disobedience and property damage, which is not new. If you go back to the civil rights movement, Martin Luther King Jr., who was the greatest purveyor of peace, was probably arrested the most,
Yep.
and was an encourager of social disobedience. So we shouldn't be as shocked when we see these things.
Gotcha.
Right.
Thank you, Greg. All right, we can go ahead and move on to number 10, Lydia.
Oh, it's me.
Yeah.
Additionally, why do the results of sports games get a pass when teams win or lose important matches?
Like, why is it okay for Philadelphia, like for people to burn down Philadelphia after the Eagles win the Super
Oh,
Bowl? Yeah. Or like whenever Vancouver, the Canucks, whenever they lost the Stanley Cup, everybody, they torched Vancouver, but nobody cared. It wasn't like, oh, like, you shouldn't be doing this. But sports, it's suddenly understandable. So I just want to know, like from y'all's perspective, why is there a pass there? Does anybody?
And how does it make you feel?
Yeah.
Child, don't get me started.
We want to get you started. That's the thing.
Let's get you started, Nash. Let's hear it. Yeah.
No, it just irks me.
Yeah.
I don't know if I can answer the question as to why besides color.
Right?
It's disappointing that example right there just triggers me.
Yeah, well, and it makes no sense. It's like, especially if your team wins, why would you want to destroy the city that the team won? And I mean, I have no idea, but to me, it infuriates me. It's like, oh, it's cool, the Eagles won the Super Bowl, and everybody's like burning down Philadelphia. That's badass. But then somebody gets murdered, and the same thing happens. Oh, Target's pretty important. Like you shouldn't be doing that. It's just ridiculous to me.
And they do it with multiple things. When Katrina happened in New Orleans, there was a black man looting for bread and a white woman finding her next meal, or so they worded.
That's a
the
good
word.
point. That's a good point.
Yeah, they word them differently, or it may be the black thug or the white teenager whose parents just got divorced.
Right.
So they're trying to sympathize for one audience, and then black audiences or any audience of color is marginalized and made to seem bad by the words that they use.
Yeah, and that's a good point. I mean, watching some of the videos of what happened at that Target is you saw people who were part of the protest getting milk because they were getting tear gassed, and that's a way, I guess, I've never been tear gassed, but I guess that's a way to alleviate it. But then I saw two white people, three of them, sorry. One person was taking lamps. The other person took a whole mannequin for some reason. I probably don't want to know why they took the mannequin, but they took it. And then there was a third man taking Legos, and I was like, okay, but nobody's talking about that.
But we're going to focus on the guy with the milk.
Right. Which is, it's insane to me. Awesome. So thank you all a lot for that. I mean, I just kind of wanted to know that because it's absolute hypocrisy why one's okay and one's not.
When they're essentially the same.
Yeah. And then kind of moving a little bit forward in history, kind of going on the music side of it, because this was one of the most influential albums of all time. So how influential was NWA's 1988 album Straight Outta Compton in drawing attention to the issue of police violence and continued racism in the United States? Because that was coming out of the 80s. A lot of your hair metal bands, they were talking about sex, drugs, and rock and roll, not social justice issues. But of course, NWA was the group that got banned on the radio, not Scorpion or Aerosmith or whatever. Yeah. So just how influential was that in our popular culture?
I mean, huge. I think that because they were telling the truth. They were telling what was actually happening to them, to their friends, to their family, in the neighborhoods that they were living in. And they describe it in details in their song. And same with Ice-T. He thought he had that song, Cop Killer. Because the same things were happening that are happening currently, and it's it's sad to think how long ago that was. And here we are, 20, 30 years removed from that. And we're still having that same conversation, because any one of us could just be out and they can just decide that it's over for us. I think that, and that's real truth. And that was their real truth.
Gotcha. Thanks, Jacob. Anybody else have anything? Greg, I noticed you unmuted.
Yeah, it's definitely, transcended time. To remember when, We Shall Overcome was the voices in the song that they sing. And even today, with some of the atrocities, we still hear F the police. And that impact and that storytelling is still relevant today, sadly.
Gotcha. Thanks, Greg. Okay, Lydia, we can go ahead.
Yeah, sure. So we fully support Black Lives Matter. However, why do you think it makes people uncomfortable and when they counter with all lives matter?
To me, that just means you aren't connected. You aren't putting yourself in other people's shoes. You're thinking solely about yourself. I feel like it just stems from not being aware. That could never make me uncomfortable if someone was to say Black Lives Matter or I'm proud that I'm this, or like I just feel like I just don't have like that bone in my body where that would bother me.
Yeah.
So to me, I don't understand.
Yeah, and kind of like what you were mentioning earlier, Alexxus, about kind of like the erasure of color whenever we were talking about not seeing color. It's one of those things that's like whenever you hear Black Lives Matter, and then if you hear a person who isn't of color hearing that, and then they feel uncomfortable, they're like, wait, shouldn't all lives matter? Which, of course, that's...
Of course
You're like, that's not the point.
That's not
but
the point. Because I was messaging Lydia the other day, and it's like if we're going to throw a benefit for breast cancer, that doesn't mean that we don't care about lung cancer or brain cancer. You know, just right now, Black lives are the ones like who are that are being expended, and it's absolutely unfortunate. Yeah.
Being pro-Black doesn't mean you're anti-white.
Yeah, I love that. I love that.
Oh, wow. That is good.
That is good. Yeah, that is good. Greg, what you got?
Well, I was going to say the thing. I agree all lives matter, but what we know clearly today is all lives don't matter to everybody.
Right.
And that's why you have a Black Lives Matter movement. And I wish people would focus on that. And I think you had an eloquent point. I mean, why can't I care about a specific movement? Why can't I give support to a specific group? That doesn't mean that I hate or support racism or sexism because I give support to a specific cause. So,
gotcha. Yeah. Thanks, Greg. Thank you. So does anybody else have anything else they'd like to add before we move on? We're going to be talking more about the George Floyd incident here in a second. Okay, cool. Thank you all very much. So I am going to go ahead and read what President Trump tweeted for listeners or viewers who may be unaware, but he did tweet the following on May 28th. He said, quote, "I can't stand back and watch this happen to a great American city, Minneapolis. A total lack of leadership. Either the very weak radical left mayor, Jacob Frey, get his act together and bring the city under control, or I will send in the National Guard and get the job done right. These thugs," and thugs are in all caps, "are dishonoring the memory of George Floyd, and I won't let that happen. Just spoke to Governor Tim Walz and told him that the military is with him all the way, any difficulty, and we will assume control. But when the looting starts, the shooting starts. Thank you." Trump said thank you, not me. So how harmful is that language?
Dude, and that's coming from the head of the state.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, it's unfathomable, really, just that, like, you know, and since he's come to office, I don't care what side you're on, there's more dividedness between the country as a whole. And then it's like, then you want to go deeper into that. It's like, to me, I feel like he's made racism okay. Whether it was not even just against black people, but against Latinos or Asians, you know, whoever. I feel like he's pretty much shown hatred towards everyone. Right. And made it seemingly okay.
And misogyny.
Let's not forget misogyny. Yeah. Well, it's like what Greg said earlier about like the stereotypes, like with what's going on with even COVID right now. Like he's been constantly referring to it as the Wuhan COVID virus. And it's like, yes, that's where it's originated, but it's not like, you know, people who are from Asia aren't the only ones carrying it. Like it doesn't matter where the pandemic started. It started, you know, like that's how it is. I'm sorry. If somebody else wanted to chime in.
I don't know how often, I just have to say this. Yeah. I don't know how often I say, when am I going to wake up? This has to be a dream. Like there's no way that this man is president of the United States of America.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel
what's sad is people still support him after these tweets.
Yeah,
after things that he's saying.
This list of things that he's said and done, like how.
Yeah, and
Exactly.
And the divisiveness that he's causing is even more evident in the question we're going to ask next. But just like this language of like when the looting starts, the shooting starts. Like that to me seems like just open fire on people.
No, to me, he for sure was saying that if your citizens are looting, then you should shoot them.
Yeah.
And what?
Yeah.
At what point is like that is crazy?
Where was he saying that with the two men who murdered Ahmaud Arbery? Like why wasn't he saying like, oh, somebody should have shot them, or Derek Chauvin, the cop who murdered George Floyd? Where was he saying when that starts, the shooting starts? Because that's self-defense. I mean, like, yeah, stealing is wrong, but stealing versus murder, like that's two, and especially stealing for survival, like that's two very different things, obviously.
100%.
I feel horrible. This whole question gets to me too, and when I start to feeling, I try to be quiet. But it saddens me because I've become desensitized to what Trump says now. I personally thought that after he made the rude remarks towards Latinos, calling them rapists, and especially after he made fun of a person with disabilities at one of his rallies, I thought that would be the end of it. But then I kept seeing people support him. And it's really to the point to where when I read that, I'm like, that's something that Trump would say when to
You like didn't surprise
shooting.
you.
It did not surprise me. And that's really, really just sad to think of it that way.
Especially since it's our president.
Yes, from the president of the United States.
Yeah.
And the line the word that was all capped.
Yeah.
I want to point that out.
Let's talk about that.
Yeah. Thugs. All caps.
It goes back to what I was saying earlier, how depending on how you use a word, when people use words, certain words to fit for different audiences. But he did not call anyone who was standing at the Capitol steps to fight social distancing with firearms.
Literally full body suits,
Yes.
AK-47.
He didn't call them thugs. He called them citizens wanting their freedom.
Yeah, he was like upstanding citizens at the Capitol.
Yeah, we actually have that tweet for the next question, so I'm glad you brought that up because it is plain to see the difference. Like it is literally like the receipts are there. Like the writing is literally on the walls with what he said. Yeah, and it definitely seems like it's just like he's condoning just opening fire on.
And do you think that the use of the term thugs in his tweets, and not just towards the Black community, but the Latinos and things like that, do you think that is causing a lot of the racial issues that we're having too between people?
I think it promotes it. I think it adds to it. Personally, I don't think I wouldn't call it the cause of it, but it gives people that opportunity to say, "Oh yeah, they are thugs," or it gives them a subconscious pre-notion about that person's life, even though they don't know them. They're thinking, "Oh yeah, they probably have no job and are gangbangers," but that's not the case.
Right. Right. Well, and it's like you mentioned with the Latinos. I think he called those. I think he lumped them in as a whole as bad hombres. I think is what he said, and that's just like especially in Oklahoma, which not only has in Tulsa we have a high African American population, but we have a very high Latino population here as well. So like what Greg was mentioning and like what you were mentioning, Nash, like with working in these diverse communities, like it's just like people. A lot of people think that words don't hurt, but like I can sit here and say this all I want because as a privileged white man, like of course they don't hurt me because I'm a privileged white man. But if somebody calls me a thug, like whatever, like there's no deeply rooted hatred in that. But it's just the fact that language matters, and then you have everybody saying like, oh, that's just locker room talk, or finally like he's like somebody's not afraid to say how they feel, but it's like you shouldn't be feeling like that. It's just it's bad. It's bad. Greg, do you have anything you would like to add before moving on to the next one?
Man, I can't even really talk about 45 because he just speaks to the ugliness, the mental fringe part of society that is extremely dangerous. You got people drinking Clorox because of a tweet the president's made, and he's only made the situation worse. And I think because I think racism and discrimination is a heart issue. It's an issue of the heart. And he has brought back, or I wouldn't say brought back because Nash is right, it's always been here, but he has been fertilizer to some seeds that have longly plagued our country. So it's really unfortunate.
I would like to add to that in light, or as a light in this situation, that we have just hit rock bottom and there is nowhere but up from here, and that people who maybe didn't care about politics before, your eyes are opened now, and please know that your voice matters and your voice counts and your vote counts.
It's true.
Absolutely, 100%.
Before we move on to this question, I actually had one other question that's random that I would like your opinion on. Do you think that racism is more of a generational issue? Like, do you see racism for people that are older, more people that are older, or our generation? Do you see the line where it's like, okay, after the age of 50, people are, 50 or younger, they're not, you don't see as much racism from that generation, or?
Capital yes.
Capital yes.
But that doesn't mean it doesn't exist in younger generations either, because they're obviously seeing
it trickles down.
Them.
Raising them. Because I felt like I experienced a lot. Probably my most in high school was like with that. So like to say, I feel like it's less prominent in the younger folks, you know? I think they're a little more open-minded, but still very much exists.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
'Cause
100%.
those are their parents. Those are their grandparents.
100%.
Yeah.
And they're just learned behavior at that point.
Yeah.
Was her name Amber Cooper in New York City? The one that had the dog.
Oh, thank you.
Something
yeah.
Cooper.
Yeah.
She wasn't older. She was my age-ish. I think it's dwindling down with the next generations, but it's also a little bit harmful. And there's other things like with the younger generation, and everyone can say the N-word, which I'm not a fan of, but there's some different issues that that go on, and still some people.
Yeah,
it's a good point.
And I'm glad you brought up Amber or whatever her name was, because that literally happened earlier this week, and I wanted to talk about it on the show. But then Minneapolis St. Paul happened, and that totally like lit something else the whole other direction. But for those of you listening and viewing, there was a woman walking her dog in Central Park in New York City, and a black man was. And then a black man was recording her because she was harassing him. And she said that she called the police and said that I have a black man here. Like, she emphasized
she
black
literally
man.
said it.
Right.
She weaponized it.
Yeah. And that's the thing. It's like, like she was using that exactly like as a weapon to say, like, you already know your odds aren't bad, or your odds aren't good, excuse me, but I've went ahead and
But now I just amplified it because I'm a white woman.
Yeah.
And you know what he was doing? Birding.
Yeah.
He was looking at birds.
Yeah, literally.
That's all he was doing, was chilling,
And
looking
he just
at
wanted
birds.
her to follow the rules.
And he wanted her to follow the rules, because why can't she just follow the rules like everybody else?
And if he wouldn't have been following the rules, I guarantee you she would have said something.
Oh,
Guarantee you.
100%.
Guarantee you. Yeah. And it's just, it's crazy. And we see a lot of these, I don't mean to get off topic, but we see a lot of these criminals who aren't of color, like a lot of the mass shooters and stuff like that are white
They're
men.
always white men.
Yeah. And they're more often than not, of course, white men, but they almost always get taken peacefully by law enforcement. But then you have like Trayvon Martin, who was carrying Skittles. He had nothing on him, and he gets shot by George Zimmerman. Or you have George Floyd, who was allegedly committing check fraud. Like,
oh, I thought
something like that.
The woman said that he gave her a bad $20 bill
or something,
but
like
it
that.
wasn't bad.
Yeah, and then he lost his life because
over
of it.
$20.
Right, and he loses his life, and I don't have words for it. Like, it just makes no sense that, like, the odds like of me going out and committing a violent crime, the police won't kill me, but literally anyone on the panel here can go do something that even looks suspicious, and they're automatically at much higher danger, even though I did a violent crime, which is absolutely maddening.
They not only won't kill you, but they'll also get you Burger King if you're hungry.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Get you a sandwich.
Yeah. Greg said, yeah, they'll get you a sandwich. Yeah.
And recently there was a guy, I might be close to the mic. There was a guy who was in, I forgot the state, but he killed 2 people, and he was on the run, and they found him, and a picture resurfaced of when they caught him. They're giving him like water and like
the guy that they found in the forest after he killed 2 people, the white guy. Yeah.
Yes.
And
that just happened too.
so he killed 2 people, and he's getting treated pretty nicely. But you have Floyd, who didn't do anything wrong and is dead now.
And they would probably never call that guy that killed 2 people a thug. They would probably say something about it being mental health.
Yeah, or
mental
They
health.
actually did, already have.
Yeah.
They have already
Troubled
said it was
teen.
Troubled teen.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah. It's absolutely sickening. So Lydia, I think you have 14.
Yep.
Okay.
So to follow up on that, the difference between racial treatment is further made evident by Trump's response to the largely white crowd protesting COVID restrictions at the Michigan State Capitol building in Lansing. In this scenario, individuals showed up to a government building armed, screaming at the police, and causing disturbances. Trump said to this on Twitter on May 1st. The governor of Michigan should give a little and put out the fire. These are very good people, but they are angry. They want their lives back again, safely. See them, talk to them, make a deal. Why are armed white people in a government building good people, but the second unarmed persons of color protest their thugs?
It's the ingrained racism that just goes all the way back to making people of color look bad or assuming they're bad people and have bad history or doing things that are not good for the world.
And I feel like a lot of people will do these absolute gymnastics to find, like mental gymnastics to find like one minor thing the person of color did wrong to make it seem like they weren't that great of a person. Like CNN actually, so like this is of course on all sides of media, not just Fox News, but CNN reported on George Floyd today saying that, oh, he also had underlying health conditions that led to his death. I'm like, yeah, but I'm sure like a 180 plus pound man with literally his knee on your throat on a curb, that surely didn't help, you know? And it's just, it's sad. It's absolutely sad.
And it's irrelevant. It's like you still killed him in cold blood, you know? It's like
Like you were still the cause,
yeah,
bro.
you still did it.
Right. It doesn't matter. Like, exactly.
And he wasn't even resisting. Like there was no point.
Yeah, he was literally crying for his mother in his last moments, and nobody deserves that. Nobody deserves that. And it's just, again, I feel like a lot of this we're at a loss for words because it's the fact that it's 2020. Like you would envision that, especially now, this would be a very minority thing, like a minority as in people who still participate in racism, because this, you know, I personally don't think we can ever fully get rid of it, but it should at least be on a societal level gone.
Right.
Or so we think. Or
and it should be acknowledged, I think we should. And like you guys were saying earlier, is like you can't turn away from it. You can't turn away that Nash is black. Like I acknowledge that Nash is black, and I acknowledge that I am an ally for that, and that I should do whatever I can to make sure that Nash can go to wherever he wants to go without being afraid to go there.
Yeah, and absolutely, Lydia, you're right, and you've even called me out on my privilege. Like I remember 2 episodes ago, whenever I said that it was about Ahmaud Arbery, where I said that we don't have to worry about our safety when going out in public. But then you said, hold up there, because you're a man and you're a woman. So obviously you're going to be like, I didn't even, of course I don't, how do I word this? Of course I think that sexual assault and battery is of course an issue, but you don't have to think about it.
I
don't have to thank you. That's what I was saying.
I did. Yeah. So I was like, hold on, Steven. Because it's true. Yeah. I mean, I can't go to a parking lot after 9:00. I don't go by myself. And I don't probably go at all just for that reason, because I'm a woman.
Right.
But go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying, sorry. I was just saying that I am glad you called me out on that, because that, even though I meant nothing by it, other than the fact that us being white, by the color of our skin, like we were not going to get like literally lynched, what happened to Ahmaud Arbery. But then on top of that, if you are a woman person of color, like then that could, or a lot of times you see like the LGBTQ plus community, that like they get even like their numbers in terms of unwarranted violence are even higher. So it's a lot of those things that we have to be consistently made aware of, that, like as a white man, like I literally have damn near nothing to worry about, and that's, and I was saying that because I'm glad you brought that up, because it's like, while race is like one piece of the puzzle, it's gender, it's sexual orientation, it's a lot, it's discrimination that's happening on a lot of different avenues, and right now we just want to focus on Black Lives Matter because of the fact that it's been not even 6 months into the year, and and all of these horrible instances have happened. So, but to me, it's just like literally, could you imagine if you see a lot of people on Facebook, like posting pictures with their guns and things like that, like especially in Oklahoma, like we have gun culture here, and that's neither here nor there. But if I posted a picture of a gun versus like Greg, Nash, Alexxus, or Jacob, like it's two separate things. And
Your comments would be 100% different.
yeah, 100%. Or it's like if I had a picture of my gun, but like what if I was a Muslim man, then that would also be a thing too.
100%.
And to me, that's just crazy. So I guess to close, like what as a country and those of us with social privilege, like what can we do to support Black lives? Because again, it's Black Lives Matter. It's the fact that you all are our friends, you're our neighbors. Like Nash mentioned that he's actually seen Jacob before at Jacob's place of work because Nash buys cookies from there. Like it's
Lots of them.
Yeah, lots of them. like it's literally and Greg is one of my bosses at work. Like these are people who we respect, who we love, who we spend literally every days of our lives with, and it's unfair the fact that you all are obviously being treated differently. So what can we do? Because obviously on a national level, nothing's being done. Right. So like as citizens, what can we do to help?
Use your voice, vote.
Awesome.
Yeah, I was gonna say what you're doing. You're giving people of color a platform to tell their side. I think it's important for everybody to of course speak up, and not just care about it when the news cycle decides to care.
Right.
Just because it's been
I love
shown
that
it
tweet.
the last month doesn't mean it hasn't been going on all year. Especially in different neighborhoods and stuff. It's like it's constant. It's never not happening. So don't just when the news cycle decides they want us to care about something else, don't forget that's still happening and support.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Check your biases. And that is something I do to myself because I have biases that may pop up or stereotypes that may pop up. And I have to say, Nash, now you know better. And I know to learn from what mistakes I've had. Or if a friend calls me out, or like what you did with Steven the other day, calling him out and just letting him know, hey, that's your privilege showing right there. Like,
Check
do
yourself.
that with your friends and have them do that back to you. And that's another great way to learn. And look at your community and see how one area of town is different from the other and how some people are treated differently off of you if you're a white American. And just kind of look into that and take some deep thought. And you'll start to realize it, and then you'll start to not be okay with it, and you'll start making those changes.
Yeah, and it's not even malicious. Like whenever Lydia told me that, like she wasn't saying that to be a jerk. She was saying it because it's true, and we have to be aware of it. Absolutely. Yeah. Greg, what do you have to say about that?
I think just continuing to use your voice in this format, continuing to create a dialogue, but most importantly than a dialogue, what we need now is action. We need our allies to speak forward and speak in the form of the ballot box and legislation. And when 45 comes up again, that's when we can speak in November. And we need all people to speak if we want to see us meet the dreams and the ideals of our forefathers of this country.
Gotcha. Thank you, Greg. Thank you for that. And so first off, thank you all very much for agreeing to be on the show today. We thought it was extremely important to have your perspectives on it. Is there anything else you all would like to add about current events or anything about how this movement is just as relevant today as it was in the 1960s? Is there anything you'd like to add on that?
I would just say I think it's really healthy to keep an open dialogue, like with friends and family, maybe. Like if you are white and you come from a white family and they seem to be kind of closed-minded or not as educated on certain issues, try your best to graciously be that voice of reason or be that open eye towards your family to have a healthy discussion, and maybe that could make some good changes in some thought processes and the way other people view things.
Awesome. Thank you, Alexxus.
Step out of your comfort zone. Meet people with different cultures and participate in those cultures and traditions just to experience it. Not saying you have to take on those traditions all the time. But for example, like one of the ones that's coming up for African Americans is Juneteenth. Now, most places are not going to be doing anything crazy this year because of COVID, unfortunately. But in 2021, go to a Juneteenth festival, or on Juneteenth, which is a holiday to celebrate the day that the last slaves were freed. About a year and a half after they were actually freed. It's just no one told them, because we didn't have Facebook back then, so it took a while. So June 19th marks that day, but there may be some online events that are happening to commemorate that. Join in tomorrow. What's today?
Today's Saturday.
The date
May 30th.
Yeah, tomorrow starts the anniversary of the Tulsa Race Massacre.
Yep.
It happened May 31st to June 1st. I'm not good with dates.
It's okay.
So look online. I think there's a free conference online about that to learn.
Oh, that's kind of cool.
Step out of your comfort zone.
Cool. Thank you very much. Greg, is there anything else that you'd like to add?
I would just say I agree with everything everybody else says. I think we need to listen to all voices. Black voices are not the only voices that matters. I think our Latino brothers and sisters have their own plights, our Asian brothers and sisters, the LGBTQ. I can't remember the rest of it, so forgive me. Listen to all groups, because all of us have stories and need healing.
Absolutely. Thank you, Greg.
100%.
Yeah. So again, thank you all so much for having this dialogue with us. Obviously, I'm sure it wasn't easy to talk about with recent events, but we really do appreciate it because we want to make sure you all are heard in the most ethical way that we can, and to promote this idea that hey, even though the 1964 Civil Rights Act was signed, this is still going on. This is just as real today as it was whenever our parents were alive, and your grandmother, Nash, and things like that. So we really do appreciate you all being on the show today. We're going to go ahead and just skip our regular goodbyes because, again, that's kind of lighthearted and this is a serious conversation. But again, we appreciate it. You all know where to find us on social media, but please if you're inclined to share this, please feel free to do so, because this goes beyond just listening to the podcast. This is something that is happening to your neighbors and your friends, your coworkers, people who you don't know but deserve to be treated like a human being. So we'd really appreciate that. But for now, this is Steven.
And this is Lydia.
And we will see you all later.
Bye, guys.
Bye.